Launch Today is the podcast focused on what it takes to get your new business to $1 million or more in revenue. From marketing tactics to incredible guest interviews, we focus on sharing behind-the-scenes insights from masters in their field. If you want to grow the revenue for your startup or business, you don't want to miss today, because joining us is a marketing maverick and fractional CMO extraordinaire, Sonia Baschez. Sonia's journey is a testament to the power of strategic marketing in driving growth. From orchestrating email campaigns for Hillary Clinton's presidential run to spearheading marketing efforts for a bunch of different startups, Sonia has consistently delivered results that speak volumes. As the founder of End Growth, she now serves as fractional CMO for exceptional startups, guiding them from zero to millions in revenue. Her clients read like a who's who of the startup world, backed by top-tier investors such as Khosla, True, and Bedrock. But Sonia's expertise doesn't stop there. She's also a PR wizard, having helped launch TED Talks that garnered millions of views and grown social media following from scratch to tens of thousands. Today, she'll share her valuable insights on early-stage marketing, the art of storytelling for startups, and how to craft PR strategies that catapult your businesses into the spotlight. Sonia, thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Awesome. You've only got about 40 minutes, so I'm going to dive right in. I think my first question is, you've worked with a diverse range of startups from digital books to healthcare. What are some universal principles of early stage marketing that you found apply almost everywhere?
Yeah, definitely figuring out how to position your product or company in the market, or your differentiators. What are the things that your clients are going to want the most versus your competitors? And then figuring out how to tell that story, that narrative to them so that they can relate to you and what you're building and then wanting to buy your product.
I totally agree that early stage positioning is key. How do you recommend someone figure that out?
I have a few exercises that I take people through, generally figuring out what your most valuable insight was. Generally, I start with the story that the founder, why they wanted to build this company or the product that they're building. Usually they have some reason from past experience that they've either worked at a company that had this problem and they consistently saw it and they're like, wow, I can actually solve this problem. And so they come up with that idea and then start building that, and then coming up with what the differentiators are, usually based against your competitors. Or what we're seeing a little bit more is we're working with founders that are going for legacy industries, construction, transportation, that sort of industry that hasn't really changed very much. And so they've worked in the tech world and are like, hey, this product that was built for tech companies can actually be used for these legacy industries. And so they create it for that audience instead, and then start to try to position themselves for those companies and you're actually competing against spreadsheets and emails, PDFs, which goes to show that they really need to upgrade. So that's where they start positioning themselves. And then, yeah, just going from there.
Got it. I think it was Nick Huber I follow on Twitter who says,
Yeah.
if you can find a business that still has a fax number that they use,
Yeah.
you can compete with them, right? You can eat their lunch. I think
Yeah.
finding the unique value proposition, one of the things I like to tell people is, don't tell me about you
Yeah.
on your website, in your sales materials, any of these things. Tell me about me. And that's how you make your differentiation stand out. I like the
Yeah.
upfront kind of modeling this, figuring this out. Founder story is a great way to begin.
I find
As
that they find it easier to talk about themselves and that idea from that angle than to
Yes,
just say, oh, yes, these are like the exact customers I'm going after and how we're going after them. So make it easy from them from there and then expand outwards to the bigger goal.
like that. One of the problems I see founders struggle with a lot is they tend to talk about their product. I've built this thing, I'm proud of it, instead of the results of their product. How do you get a founder to change their mindset and talk about what their actual users want to hear?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because especially in the tech world, everyone wants to talk about the latest product features and the how we're building this amazing product. Sometimes you just have to be very upfront and say the customer doesn't really care about the latest features. They want to know how their lives are going to be made easier by using your product. So just really reminding them that they're building this to sell it to a customer and they have to be able to talk to the customer about what it is that their product is doing to help their lives. And usually when you turn it around that way, they know exactly like what it is. They just get caught up in like the fancy bells and whistles that they're building, which is good, of course, because they want to be proud of that. But it does make it hard to sell to the client.
I get that. As somebody who worked on the Hillary Clinton presidential run, that's a lot bigger than a startup,
Mhm.
just a little bit, right? But did you learn something in that very large, complicated, whirling machine of promotion that you can apply to newer businesses that are trying to scale?
Yeah, actually, so I will say that our team, the digital team, was a lot smaller. And then I was part of the email team, which is even smaller than that, because it was still figuring out how to like email people and like what to send them as like the message. And I think it was actually one of the best ways that I learned how to craft a message because I was basically sending emails every day about multiple ones. If you're on any of the political listserv that you receive multiple emails every day, those all get written by the
Yes.
same people. It's a small group of people. It's probably bigger now, actually. But at the time in 2016, it wasn't that big. A lot of what I learned is having to craft a message that's going to convince people of a few things. One, get them to come out to an event that we're hosting. Two, to get other people to participate. And then three, to get them to come out to vote. And I worked on the 38 non-battleground states. So that's even harder because those are the states that don't do as much or aren't worth as much because we already know how they're going to vote one way or the other. So one of the projects that I worked on was helping people go from the big states, California, New York, and travel to the battleground states where they were more needed. So Californians would go to Nevada and New Yorkers would go to Pennsylvania. So a lot of what I had to do was convince people to go from those states into the battleground states where they're needed. And that became like a huge initiative at the time. And it was like super successful. We had numbers that, unprecedented at the time go to those states and help to get out the vote. So that was one of the things I was really proud of. And yeah, basically learning from there is like, how do you hone in on the message to convince people to do what you want them to do in a way that makes them feel as if they're involved and are getting them to actually like do something? And so for startups, that's what's the ultimate goal that you're trying to get people to do is to convert to being a paying customer or to participate in your company in some way. And it's really about putting in on that message about what will convince them to do that. And a lot of that is by figuring out what it is that they want and how your product is going to give that to them. So just really getting back to the basics of, again, don't want to sound like a broken record here, but about the positioning about your product and what your product is going to do for that customer.
Positioning is the hub around which the whole wheel turns.
Mhm.
I agree.
Yes.
And this same idea of the clarity of messaging and getting people excited, that's got to be part of how you're growing social media followings for people. But what do you recommend? I've got like 5,000 followers on LinkedIn and I think 3 or 4 I'm not well known.
Yeah.
But if I were trying to get that passion and interest in that growth, what would you tell me or a founder like me? You've got a couple thousand people and the internet doesn't care mostly.
Yeah. So I definitely suggest that the founder use their social accounts versus the company's social accounts, just because you're able to be more authentic and have a personality behind it. Obviously, we've seen those company accounts that go viral, but that seems to
Wendy's.
be dying down a little. Yeah. Or it's owned, or like that type of persona is owned by particular companies now. And I wouldn't suggest that other companies try to do that anymore. Really use your account to show how you're building in public and doing both the successes and the failures. People want to see that it's not just this easy thing that you're doing because it's not, right? They want to see that you're a real human being that's like really going through it as you're building something new. And generally you are. So that's generally what I advise my clients. And it ends up like really working out. I've worked with a few clients that have gotten just new customers, but press from it. Someone tweeted about how they're both, it wasn't a tweet, actually, it was a LinkedIn post, tweeted about how he's building a company and his wife is building a company. And that became like a news story in their local newspaper because so you have two founders building, they're raising kids. And so it was just a human interest piece. And then that ended up getting them more attention, both of them, because, hey, you're like featured in the newspaper for something that's not necessarily about the company, but still shows that you're building what you're building and just gets you in a different position with the newspaper that you're being featured on. So I think it's pretty cool to be sharing your stories for that reason.
I think making it more human and less corporate. It is social media, right? The idea is that
Right.
we're trying to be connected to people, not mostly to brands through it.
Mhm.
Although I'll
Yeah.
admit that my Facebook feed these days is mostly just like random comics, and none
Yeah.
of my friends are there anymore.
Yeah, Facebook has completely devolved into either ads or all my boomer friends and like family because they're the only ones that post these days.
Oh man, you're outing me as old.
Mm.
Thanks for that. Okay. Awesome. All right. As a fractional CMO, they tend to bring in this role at an inflection point, at a growth stage, right? Either when things are growing up and they're like, we got to figure out how to harness this, or when things are stagnant, figure out how to make that hockey stick start to grow.
Yeah.
What's your process to quickly assess what a startup is doing and how to make a change that will impact that startup's likelihood for success?
Yeah. So basically, I do a series of like exercises with the company, figuring out to start again their positioning. You'd be surprised how many companies do not know how to write about their product, even starting with their landing page, which is like the biggest form of marketing that people have these days, right? It's like people are going to land
Oh,
on your
yeah.
website. If they cannot figure out what it is that you do within a few seconds, they are going to bounce very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So if that's like your first impression on your future customers, and they can't understand what it is that you do or how what you do is different from your competitors or why it's worth purchasing your product versus your competitors, they're just not going to buy your product. And then figure out what sorts of channels they're currently using, what's working, what's not working. Have they tried any marketing whatsoever? Generally, most companies are like, no, we haven't really done anything. But then you come to find out they do send some emails, they have a blog that they've created. It's not very like continuous, but it's there. What sorts of things are they posting on social? So there's little things that they do. We just have to figure out what are the ones that are working at the time and then jumpstart those. And then if they haven't set up some of the basics, including email and social, then it's like setting that up for them. There are companies that haven't set up welcome email series, which you think are like basics, but they just haven't gotten around to it. Usually, sometimes I'm working with like founders, it's like a team of two. So you really have to like hone in on what's actually going to make the biggest difference when there's such limited bandwidth. So helping them set up automated email campaigns, whether that's welcome series or like nurture campaigns that'll get people to stay in the pipeline and figure out how long it takes for a client to become a paying customer, or setting up re-engagement campaigns for the folks that have signed up or had signed up when they initially launched, but they have been stagnant. In the meantime, has let them setting those up to get them to come back. And since those are automated, it generally just takes the one time to set them up. And then we can come back to that a little bit later, figuring out if there's any type of content that they're already creating that we can put across. If we're creating the content for the email, that we can use that for social and for a blog. And then figuring out what they're doing on social that could also be used somewhere else and something like that. And then the biggest thing is when they're headed towards some sort of launch, whether they've raised a pre-seed or seed series A, is there a way that we can get them press from that, which is going to be the biggest boost that they can have at the time?
Gotcha. Yeah, that is always nuts to me. The low hanging fruit you'll find when you work with clients. I've got one I was working with this last month. We had their July ad spend had a 5-to-1 return on ad spend. Super cool. But of
Mhm.
course, the majority of people don't convert to paying.
Right.
And I'm like, show me your reactivation campaign. They're like, what? And I went, okay, what's the right one? And so
Yeah.
we did. And that went just by sending one email to all their July signups.
Mhm.
The July spend went from 5-to-1 to 8-to-1. Right?
Wow.
Reactivated active 4 or 5
Mhm.
paying accounts, just like
Yeah.
that. And it's this money that they left lying there. And now it's automated, right?
Yeah.
60
Yeah.
days and 90 days after we bump again. There you go.
Yeah.
Now making
Yeah.
more money. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
these things are so easy to do, but also so easy to overlook when you're doing 100 things.
Yeah, definitely. I find that some founders also focus on top of funnel a lot more than they do
Ooh,
their current bottom of the funnel folks,
yeah.
which is interesting because it's like you've already got them. Now you just have to talk to them. And it could
Yeah.
just be a matter of they signed up so long ago, they don't even know what new product features you've launched that are now relevant to them. You just need to set up some basic like referral campaign for the happy customers you already have to get you more customers that are just like them, that sometimes a lot of people don't think about, like, how can I help out this company that I like and that I want to continue having exist. I can refer them to other people that I know want this same product. So sometimes you have to remind customers to do that for you. Hey, you're happy. Please bring us new clients. And those campaigns also work really well because it's like generally the same type of customer that you're trying to bring in. And you have basically what's like a warm intro, right? You're not just like cold outbounding to folks, which is a little bit harder to do and to then convert when you need them to.
That does bring a interesting question up. I'm finding that the landing pages and the offers that used to work a year ago
Mm.
don't work anymore. Book a demo, schedule a free
Yeah.
consultation, like none of this works anymore. Are you finding something that does consistently get people excited for a SaaS product or a service agency where they're like, hey, this is what people want to hear now?
A lot of the times you still need to book a demo. You just have
Mhm.
to word it differently. So now I'm finding it's a bit easier to word it if it's coming directly from the founder saying, hey, do you have a few minutes for us to jump on a call? And then, so you're wording as you're going to be talking to them personally, as opposed to, hey, you're sign up for a demo and you'll meet somebody else on the team and they might not even be able to help you because it's like the customer service person who knows what we're doing. Not really. I've found actually been working with my husband's company, Lex. They do a word processor with AI baked in. And one of the most successful emails he's having right now, and that is then leading to conversions, is to send the initial email in the welcome after the welcome series. Sorry, it's concurrent to the welcome series. He sends out a personal email from his account saying, hey, I saw you just signed up. I'd love to take you through a few of the new features that we have. Here's a link to sign up for like my personal calendar. And that's leading to a huge uptick in how many people are actually signing up for a demo, but then also then converting to paid customers because now they're like involved. They're like, hey, I talked to the CEO of the company. He's really cool. And he showed me all these things that are like useful to what I do, you would use the product for because you're able to guide them through it a lot more customized than just sending like a video saying, hey, these are all the features that we have. That's a really good way. And we've seen that with the way that Superhuman grew
Oh, yeah.
their company was you have to book a demo. We'll show you how to use the email. And now people are like invested and have been using the product years now. You take lessons from that as well.
Superhuman is a really interesting case because they require you on board with the
Right.
CSM. Like it's not an
Mhm.
optional thing. And
Yeah.
that's an interesting ask for what is theoretically a purely software product.
Mhm,
But
mhm. Right.
by forcing that onboarding, you're showing people all the features that they could unlock.
Right.
And then people bother to learn the shortcuts and the keyboard commands and all these things that, like, I've used Asana for almost a decade, I think.
Mhm.
And I only
Yeah.
know two of the keyboard shortcut commands. There's 30,
Mm.
right? No one knows
Yeah.
this, but
Yeah.
Superhuman forces you to learn it, which I think is a really impressive way to do it.
Yeah. Then that kind of became the standard for most other products, right? Because
Mhm.
now Notion has those options.
They do.
Lex has those options too, because it's assuming that people that use Superhuman would also be using this product. So it's now just made its way across the web and has become the way that people know how to use certain products.
Gotcha. So one thing I hear not infrequently from founders is we've grown to whatever 300K, 500K, whatever it is, with no marketing whatsoever, right? Like a
Live.
marketer is proud of themselves. We've grown this big with no marketing of any kind.
Yeah.
How do you talk to somebody and explain to them, one, yes, you have been, but two, this is important. If you want to grow bigger, you have to invest in it.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest misconceptions I think across tech that there has been no marketing. It's to me very annoying because I think it's led to this idea that marketing is not important and that you can just build the product to then take people through the process and that'll lead to the conversions. And yes, to some extent that is true. There are a lot of products that have grown from product led growth, but I would counter that is marketing. The way that you're figuring out what the language is, the way that you're figuring out how many steps it takes for people to eventually convert, what it is that they do when they land on a page and how they then move forward. That all becomes a part of the marketing process, just that you haven't thought about it that way. And then generally, most, like I've mentioned, most companies have already done some sort of messaging, even the website, the fact that you've copywritten it to figure out what's going to work with people and what's not is a form of marketing. It's just, it doesn't get thought of that way. then generally what I do to talk about them is, okay, so you brought them this far, but show me the numbers. Like how many people are actually converting from your landing page? Are they converting to a signed account? From there, are they signing up for the next step in the journey to eventually becoming a paid customer? And somewhere along the way, we find the breakdown of, oh, yes, we get a huge influx of people that are coming in, and then we get signups. Okay. But then how many of those are actually paid signups? And that's where it breaks down. And that's where it's, okay, so you're missing out on all these people, or you're bringing in the wrong type of people and then they're signing up and then realizing, oh, this isn't actually a thing that I want slash need. That's like honing in on, do you actually want to bring in the type of people that are going to convert to paid? Or do you want to just keep bringing in a whole bunch of useless names that, sure, juice up your numbers, but don't actually start paying? And I think what's happening now is a lot of companies are starting to realize that, oh shit, we're getting a huge amounts of people that are coming to our landing page, signing up for accounts, and then never converting to paid accounts. And because of the economy and the way that investing is like going these days, companies are realizing that they actually need to get those paid customers to convert, because otherwise they're not going to last that much longer. And they're most definitely not going to be able to raise this next time, because companies, investors want to know, hey, are people actually going to pay for the product that you say that you're building? And if they're not, then you're certainly not going to get investments for your next raise. Now we're starting to see, oh shit, yes, we need to focus on the conversions and then bringing in the right type of customer. And that's where they reach out and they're like, hey, can you like help? We've done these things. And then it's good. They've done some things, but now it's like, how do we eventually get to that conversion? And that's where I come in and we start checking out all their channels, figuring out like what's working, what's not working, and then going from there. And I will say a lot of these companies are very okay spending on ads, but don't want to spend on the person that will help them make sure that
Mm.
the ads are converting to paid users and not just bringing in a whole bunch of people. So maybe spend a little bit less on ads and spend on the person that can help you build out overarching marketing plan that when you bring in the users will then convert those people as much as possible that probably wouldn't convert otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. I'm old enough as a marketer. I remember back when they used to teach the 5 Ps: product,
Mm.
price, placement, promotion, and people. And almost inevitably, a founder thinks of like placement, direct ads. That's all. That's what marketing is. Nothing else
Yeah.
is.
Mhm.
And you're like, there's 4 more Ps,
Mhm.
like all of these,
Yeah.
which marketers do. And if you don't think you've been doing marketing, you're wrong. You've been doing it. You just
Yeah.
maybe haven't been systematic.
Yeah.
The other relevant story, I've got a client I was working with who had acquired thousands of users, exactly like you're talking about. Conversion to paid was crap. And
Mhm.
they only realized at the end of the year that we've got all these users and the conversion rate through is actually like is trash. No one's making it
Mhm.
work. We tripled their overall revenue in 90 days by making the landing page conversion worse, which sounds insane. But when
Yeah.
you drive away people who aren't a good fit,
Right.
and instead you make the marketing only speak to the right people, that's the last P of the 5,
Yeah.
those will convert and they're more likely to pay. And they also know, oh, this is for me.
Right.
This is not a generic product. So then what I said on the landing page carries you through to the in-cart onboarding. And then you go, oh, this is what I wanted to do when you buy. And so aligning those things is super important. And I agree. You can spend 10 grand a month on ads and say, we
Mhm.
got 1,000 signups a month. Awesome. But how much money are you making? That makes no
I
difference.
Exactly. Yeah. That return on ad spend, really, you really have to hone in on what that conversion is, because otherwise you're just throwing money into the fire pit. And that's increasingly becoming the case with all ads, Facebook, Google,
Any of them.
Instagram, everything, unless you can like really hone in on the exact target audience that will actually buy from you and convert. It's seemingly just burning cash, which is becoming harder and harder to allow for most
To
companies.
swallow.
So,
Yeah. And increasingly, I hear founders talk about, not increasingly, it's persistent. I work with an ad agency. They were awful. We didn't make any money.
yeah.
And it's because I think the difference between fractional CMO work and
Mhm.
hiring somebody on Fiverr
Mhm.
is somebody on Fiverr will run your ads and they
Mhm.
might be very good at running your ads. What happens after sign up is beyond their purview. They don't
Right.
care. Fractional CMO goes and says, yeah, your signups are here. What happens after?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's where you see that extra value.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're building out the entire customer journey and figuring out where along, each of the steps, you can lead to more conversions. And the thing is a lot of the journey is not going to be the same for each customer. Sometimes it's going to be longer. Sometimes it's going to be shorter. It really depends on what your particular sales cycle is and where the customer is on their journey. Are they already ready to purchase from you? Or do they need to learn a little bit more? And so by setting up those campaigns, the nurture campaign, both through email or like on the blog where you're educating folks on what your product is and how they can use it and what the benefits are, eventually will lead to those sales. So those are things that you should be thinking about when you're talking to customers. Oh, that's the other thing. Like one of the biggest things I really like to talk to the founders about is talk to your customers, the initial ones. Most customers, especially in the early stages, are willing to talk to you and tell you exactly what they think about what you're building and how you're building it. And you should use them, use those insights to formulate an idea of what it is that the customer wants from you and the type of customer that will purchase from you. And then use that to then think about how you're going to build your product roadmap in the future. Are there features that some of them say are more important than others? Oftentimes, I'll find that founders talk to a customer and the thing that they thought the customer wanted is not the thing that they wanted, and think about how much time they would have wasted spending building this thing that the customer ultimately wouldn't have moved the needle for them. Whereas this other thing that ended up being more relevant will actually lead to more conversions. But you can only learn that by talking to your customer. And a lot of founders are either like, I don't have enough time to talk to them. It's, if you don't have time to talk to your customers, like that's a problem because there's so many learnings that you can get from that. And it's time saving issues as well that, like I said, you could be building this thing that you thought was important that ends up not being as important as this other thing if you're focused on it. And then this is also the time of doing the unscalable things. So if you can talk to like your customers now, it doesn't mean you're always going to have to talk to them in the proportion that you are now. But right now, it's the most important because you're just learning the type of customer that you're building for, the things that your customer wants. And that's far more useful than once you've gotten to the point that you're already have the roadmap, you have your ICP, your ideal customer profile, and then there won't be as many questions. Though generally, you should still talk to your customers every so often. I think there was just a
Yeah.
story about the Stripe founder who would still have customer calls even now that Stripe is a huge giant and pretty much has already figured out their product, but they still want to figure out, okay, are there ways that we can improve? And the people that are willing to tell you what you need to improve are your customers. So use that to your benefit.
The classic problem of I'm not talking to my customers means you will build something eventually that people don't want. When you've got a product led buyer's journey, the two things to pay attention to, I think, one is don't take advice from your free customers because they're
Right.
paying you, and the other is if you've got a paying customer and they really want a feature you don't have, particularly if it's a business, say, hey, I can change my roadmap if you'll pay up front.
Mhm.
And I've frequently, working in startups, gotten them $20,000, $50,000 upfront payment to shift around roadmap features, which really shows that this client needs it. And if this client's willing to
Right.
spend 50 grand, odds are somebody else wants it too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually, that does remind me of what you were saying about not building for free customers. We're starting to see a lot more companies not even offer the free tier anymore because they're like, are we just bringing in a whole bunch of people that are never going to convert to paid to only suck up the time that our team is spending to try to convert them instead of focusing on the actual people that we should be focused on, which is other paid customers. So it's really interesting to see that happening. I've seen a few companies on Twitter kind of announce that they're moving the focus away from a free tier to just focus on paid customers. And to that, I say, hooray, yes, let's do that. Let's focus on the people that are actually moving the needle for you and focus on what they want instead of spending all this time on folks that are most likely never going to convert. Obviously, you want to have some sort of exploratory phase where people could figure out what it is, but then putting an end to it within 15 days, 30 days or something like that, depending on what your specific product does. I'm working with a client right now, furniture, where they've built a 3D render product that allows designers, manufacturers, and dealers to all be on the same platform and figure out what an office is going to look like, and then allow the designers to design what the room is going to look like, the dealers to be involved in what the furniture is going to be, and then the manufacturers to build the furniture based on the specs that were created. And so because we need all three users to be on at the same time, we're allowing a longer demo phase so that they can first use the product, learn how to use it, and then have it become integrated into their process, which is a longer sales process than some of the others. So you have to take all that into account, because sometimes you're changing the process that people will have. And when you're doing that, you need them to be bought in before you can start paying. But because it's a new product, that's okay. You can have the VCs pay for that a little bit longer than you would with something that's more like people know what the product is and what it's supposed to do.
A big enough pain in a complicated buyer journey like this. You
Mhm.
cannot infrequently get a paid pilot too, where you say, look, give me
Right.
$5,000 and we'll give you 90 days to get this all working. At the end of 90 days, if you're all using it, great. Now it's 10 grand a month, right? There's ways to make this work. Cool. So let me ask you, I always like to ask every guest on this show, what's a book that you're enjoying these days, fiction or nonfiction, that you think a founder might want to read?
Gee, honestly, I'm not reading very much right now because I just had a baby, but
Oh, congratulations. But then, yes, you have no free time at all.
no. So it's like work mostly. But where did I just start?
Now
Oh,
I have
yes.
to
So that
ask, how
was,
old are your children or child?
yeah. So I have two. I have a 2-year-old and the one that a newborn that was just born. He's a month old now.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
brand
brand
new.
brand new. But actually, when he was first born, we had both sets of grandparents here helping. So I was reading Keanu Reeves just wrote a book with, I have it right here. Here. It's his first book with,
Oh, with
yeah, it's
China
called
Mieville. I didn't know
yeah.
he wrote this.
Yeah, with the book of Elsewhere, and it's super interesting. I'm like, first, how Keanu's like writing a book. Of course, I want to read that.
Yeah.
So it's just a science fiction book, which is one of my favorite genres, and it's super interesting so far. And then the other one, which I've seen, but is on my to be read, Mercy of the Gods. This is the
Oh,
author
James
that
S.A.
wrote. Yeah,
Corey.
yeah, yeah.
The Expanse
So
is so good.
yes, so one of my favorite series ever. I pretty much read through that on vacation in New Zealand. And then I watched the show, super big fan. And so this is their next series. It's on my to be read list. But
Oh, this is a new series. Look at
yeah,
you.
it just
You've
came out.
given me two phenomenal
Yeah,
recommendations.
there
That's
you
awesome.
go. Woo.
That's excellent. I would note for founders, reading fiction is a good idea. Reading fiction teaches you
Yes.
empathy,
Yes. Oh, and it
proven
teaches
by
you,
science.
yes, it teaches you how to think about your customer. So, and how to think about
Mhm.
humans in general. And I think it also gets you away from thinking about your product all the time, which I think is a huge benefit for anybody, but especially founders, because sometimes you're thinking about the problem so much over so long that you lose the context. You're, it's sometimes it's more harmful to be in it all the time than to take time to get away from it. And then you'll find that like you think about it in a different way and then you have a new perspective to it. So read books for sure.
Awesome. So now I have to ask, have you read Perdido Street Station by China Mieville?
No, I haven't. I
So
won't
China
write
has
them.
a long storied career as a
Yeah.
writer,
Uh-huh.
and Perdido Street Station is steampunk-ish fantasy,
Okay.
but really like very world building, deep, like making a lot of stuff about a world that's super interesting. So if you're liking that book with Keanu Reeves, go check out
Yeah.
Perdido Street Station. And Daniel Abrahams or Adams, I forget what his last name is, one of the two people who makes up James S.A. Corey,
Okay.
writes The Dragon's Path, which is a fantasy, weirdly. Again, I'm not recommending science fiction here, but it's about banking and economy in a fantasy world and how enough money in one place screws up like global and like the whole economy and all of the politics around it. And
Mhm.
Expanse is very like what people do in complex environments.
Mhm.
And this explores the same idea. Those are both really cool reads.
Yeah, there I love James S.A. Corey because of the world building. Like a variety of human experiences from different that are in different stations, different work, obviously different worlds. Yeah, the fact that they're able to bring all that in, but still have the human angle to it is super, super interesting.
Awesome. I think you've had some really good insights on what founders can be doing and what early stage marketers should pay attention to. I
Mhm.
completely agree. Positioning is key. I completely agree. There's so much more to marketing than just buying ads or building landing pages. Great insights and also great fiction recommendation. I love it. As we're wrapping up here at the end of our show today, if people want to find out more about you and what you do, where do they go look?
Twitter would be the easiest. Sonia Baschez at Sonia Baschez. That's Sonia Baschez. It's a new last name, so it's confusing for most people. My husband and I combined our last names, so it's brand new.
Ah,
And then LinkedIn
awesome.
as well. And then you can go to bendgrowth.co to learn more about the work I do and how I can help you at your companies.
Cool. Thank you so much for all the insights today. If you, the listener, want to learn more about how to build and grow and scale your business, make sure to subscribe to Launch Today, and you'll get all of our content as we put out stuff from Sonia and other great marketers and thinkers around the world. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
Have a good one.
See ya.